I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
We are the Pandemonium.
Good morning.
Good morning, as I try and finish a mouthful sandwich.
I'm going to make myself an egg sandwich as soon as we are done. I mean, at least I hope I can. I was hoping to start recording earlier than this, but we were knee deep in research on our topics.
It happens.
Hey, listen, I'm already ahead of the game. I finished all of my research until June. I've been doing one topic every other day just to kind of get it situated. I'm the one who's doing serotonin Saturdays as to take a load off of her.
Which I greatly appreciate.
And instead of doing gossip, we're going to do history.
Ooh.
Meanwhile, nothing really new on this front, on the baby front. New symptoms definitely experienced last night, which I told Rachel about. I was so sick. My stomach hurt. I felt like I was going to puke. I let out the nastiest, most grown man fart I have ever had in my entire life. And I was like, oh, I feel better. And I told Josh about it, and he went, ha, that's my kid.
And so in my brain, all I could do was finish the saying, going, "Father, help!"
Yeah. Meanwhile, like, my family members, I'm like, man, nobody really cares that I'm pregnant. Oh, no, they all care. They're just not spamming the chat. They apparently have a group chat without me in it. And it's so cute because they're talking about things that they can get me. And I was like, well, I want to be in that chat. And she goes, no, you're not in that chat. And I was like, well,
then it's not a surprise.
I want to know.
You were never good with surprises.
I never have been. I mean, the last time somebody surprised me, it was when Josh came to surprise me for Grandma Norma's funeral.
That's fair.
Yeah, I had autism arms for days, which is adorable. Let's see here. We've been teeter-tottering on 81 followers off and on our Facebook page for a while now, which is fine because we keep getting bots. I'll put screenshots in on the video of people who message me and go, I want to talk to you about your X, Y, and Z. And I just respond with memes.
Like the last one was just freelancer Lance, I think it was. That was just Facebook name. And I'm just like, if I wasn't sketchy before, just the name itself. Red flags.
Freelance Leon. Freelance Leon.
Close enough.
But I'm sitting here going, like, I had to block some of them because they would spam our comments. So I had to go through and delete all of them. One of them left 16 comments one time. Rachel's asleep. So I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and handle this. Delete. And she's like, somebody left a ton of comments. And I was like, yeah, I already took care of it. Don't worry. Because I'll delete them. And they were like, we'll help you grow your media base. And I was like, it's honestly through word of mouth. People who are meant to find us are meant to find us. Like, I'm not going to I don't have a job. This is my job, which I've discussed on several occasions. This is my job. I get no income and I do not care. Because we would rather bring you cases and show respect to the victims and be one of the few podcasts out there that actually brings autistic ADHD fueled humor to you while still keeping on track with the case, then be one of those people out there that make it pay for stuff.
I mean, autistic is pretty on brand too.
Autistic. I need to add that to the byline.
Yeah.
I could do that. I can do that. We stopped doing birthdays for a while. That's my fault.
I mean, the list kind of disappeared, so it was kind of hard to do it when we couldn't find the list.
I found it. So this is April. So it's halfway through April. Let's just discuss the birthdays that we have this month.
And we lost it again.
All of my screens converged and shrunk. Anyways, okay. So we have Kat or Katrina, Nicole P, Marthy, Ryder, Kylie H, and Caitlin O for this month. So happy birthday, y'all. If you want to be on the birthday list, please, please, please go to our Facebook group, find the birthday pinned post, join our Facebook group, answer the question. Please answer the questions. It's really easy. We have 2 hosts. Just 2. It's not a lot, guys. We're not asking for much. The birthdays that we missed in March, we missed Holly, Cody, Angela, Gail, Christina, TJ, Susie Q, Witchy Poo, and in February, we missed Krista, Hannah, Dr. Sister Sylvia, my kid Sam, Mel, and Tuesday, which I'm pretty sure is your sister-in-law, Tuesday. I got it right, because she has a cousin named Tuesday and a sister-in-law named Tuesday. So that's your birthday countdown from February until now. We've already done the January ones because we had no episodes for January. But if you want those as well, I can. Let's just do them real quick.
Okie doke.
We got Tiffany, Dora, Kate, Kirsten, you, of course, Michaela, our Mac, Dot or Dorothy, Shalana Shode. We got Katie, which is Poodles. We got Nolan, Jennifer, my other kid, Sydney, Leslie, and Nova, one of my other kids, and Jamie. And that is all the birthdays up until now. So happy belated birthday, you feral party possums, you. I hope you guys had great birthdays. And now that we're almost 10 minutes into it, it means the stuff is going to hit the fan because I don't have anything ready for today. It's for next time, which means Rachel's doing today's, and I'm not ready.
So we're just I'll go ahead and do a trigger warning.
This is a Pandemonium Witches podcast. Trigger warning. The following episode contains graphic violence and gruesome depictions. Listener discretion is advised.
And since he has been identified, I will use his name for the episode instead of calling him, as a lot of the articles said, as deceased or victim or just the boy. Because he deserves to be identified as who he was, as his name.
And from what you're starting off as, this is a cold case, correct?
That is correct.
I'm going to hate today.
So he was only just recently identified.
DNA technology.
So he was known as the boy in the box, or boy in a box, or America's unknown child. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli, and he was 4 years old.
You know this case has very special meaning for me. I hate you, but I love you. So thank you for doing this research for me so I didn't have to.
You're welcome. I figured if I could take it off your plate, I would.
If I cry, it is the fact that this case has haunted me for decades, which Rachel knows. It's one of those cases that every time it popped up on that show I watch, I would cry, bawl my eyes out. It's because of nuns. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say.
I was going to say because of the trauma, but okay, we'll go with nuns.
Both. ¿Por qué las dos? I mean, it's the same thing. I still have trauma with yardsticks. Don't ask. It's a long story.
Circle back to the nuns.
I still find it funny that she had that yardstick. We bought Cliff Notes. Too long, didn't read. I went to Catholic school for a good chunk of my life, and I graduated. I went to parochial school until 4th grade, public school, and then switched to public school the last quarter of my junior year and senior year. So I went from a graduating class of 60 to graduating class of 600. Big difference.
That's a jump.
Oh yeah. And it was hilarious because, the cheerleaders used to make fun of me, and I was like, I'm tutoring your boyfriend. I don't want him. I have my own, and it was Josh, and I was like, I have my own man. Thank you very much, but no. But we bought, me and a couple of the other detention girls bought Sister Peggy a metal yardstick that had all of our names, where we had broken the yardstick and she had duct taped it back together. So we had inscribed our names on the measurements. And I mean, it's morose, foul humor, but I mean, you should have seen the look on her face.
I can only imagine.
Well, enough levity.
So Joseph was 4 years old when he was found nude, severely malnourished, and beaten on the side of Susquehanna Road in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on February 25th, 1957. He appeared to be freshly groomed and clean, with a recent haircut and trimmed fingernails. However, he had suffered extensive physical attacks prior to his death and was covered in bruises along his body. Along with the bruises, there were scars that were discovered, some of which were surgical, which appeared on his ankle, groin, and shin. Authorities believed that his cause of death was homicide by blunt force trauma. Despite publicity and sporadic interest over the years, Joseph's identity would remain unknown for more than half a century. November 20th of 2022, Philadelphia Police Department announced that detectives had determined Joseph's identity through DNA and genealogical databases. December 8th, 2022, more than 65 years after he had been found, Philadelphia Police Department announced his identity public. However, despite Joseph finally being identified, the exact circumstances that led to his murder are uncertain, and the case is still considered an open homicide investigation to this day.
There's going to be a lot of people who are, mainly your sister, who's going to listen to this and be like, why didn't nobody claim him? Even though they put drawings and everything like they do typically for John Does or Jane Does in the newspaper and everything like that. This was back at a time where there were unwed mothers and unwed mother homes. And I think that's one of the cases somebody wants us to cover is the British unwed homes where that mass grave was found. You sent me that video.
It was in Ireland.
Ireland. But it's still one of those things where, of course, people aren't going to come forward because it was still considered, as you said before, taboo.
So that was just the TLDR. So to get into it. So Joseph was born to Augustus John Zarelli, who is also known as Gus, and Mary Elizabeth Abel, who was known as Betsy. This couple was not married and was never to have been known to have been in a relationship, probably a one-night stand. They both married others after Joseph was born, and Betsy had previously put a baby girl up for adoption, and one of her cousins speculated in an interview later on that she might not have been the one to have raised Joseph, possibly having given him up for adoption. He was born January 13th, 1953. Jump forward to February 25th, 1957. Joseph's body was found wrapped in a plaid blanket in the woods off of Susquehanna Road in the Fox Chase neighborhood of Philadelphia. It took me a while to learn how to pronounce that road name.
You're doing a great job, honey.
Oh, thanks. His body was discovered by a young man who was out checking his rabbit traps. He did not report what he had found. A few days later, a college student had spotted a rabbit running through the underbrush. The student knew that there was traps in the area and stopped his car, probably so that way he could release the rabbit. While looking around, he discovered Joseph's body. He was reluctant to report it to the police, but did so the following day after the disappearance of Mary Jane Barker, who was a 4-year-old girl from New Jersey who went missing along with a playmate's dog. She was discovered by her playmate in a vacant house closet. She had gone missing February 25th, 1957, and was found March 3rd, 1957, and she was not found alive.
So sad.
Joseph's body was found void of all clothes and inside a cardboard box that had once held a bassinet that was sold by J.C. Penney. Joseph's hair had recently been cut, possibly after death, as there were clumps of hair that still clung to his body. There were also several signs of severe malnourishment, along with the surgical scars on his ankle and groin and an L-shaped scar underneath his chin. Once the police received the report, they opened up an investigation on February 26, 1957. Joseph's fingerprints were taken, and the police were optimistic at first that he would soon be identified, because it's a 4-year-old child. Somebody must be missing him. However, nobody ever came forward with any useful information. The case started to attract attention in Philadelphia and in Delaware Valley. The Philadelphia Inquirer would end up printing at least 400,000 flyers that depicted Joseph's likeness. These flyers would be sent out and posted across the area, and were even included in every gas bill that was sent out in Philadelphia, which is a lot.
Well, you also have to remember at that time, there wasn't, at least in Philadelphia, there weren't a lot of missing children.
So the crime scene ended up being combed over and over again by at least 270 police academy recruits. These recruits would end up finding a man's blue corduroy cap, a child's scarf, and a man's white handkerchief that had the letter G on one corner. However, all these clues would be a dead end, and nothing was found from these items. The police ended up distributing a post-mortem photograph of Joseph, fully dressed and seated in an upright position, as they thought he would have looked while still alive, all in the hope that somebody would give them a clue. And this is where the case went cold. From 1957.
Is this when I can start looking at the photos?
Yes. My bad.
She sent me like a boatload of photos and she's like, you can't look at it. I'm like, okay.
I forgot I sent them. My bad. So from 1957 to 1998, there were no leads that would end up going anywhere. But with the time that passed, over the 41 years, forensic science and technology would improve and advance and would become useful. So jumping forward 41 years to 1998, Joseph's body would be exhumed to extract some DNA, which they got from one of his teeth. He would then be reinterred at Ivy Hill Cemetery in Cedar Brook. From there until March 21st, 2016, not much was found. In 2016, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released a forensic facial reconstruction of Joseph and added him into their database. Joseph would be exhumed again in 2019 to retrieve additional DNA samples. His identity would be found thanks to genetic testing and investigative genetic genealogy.
Genealogy?
My brain did a spasm for a second there. The Philadelphia Police Department announced that they would provide a case update in the following week on November 30th, 2022. So several years after 2016. Some sources stated that he was a child of a prominent family in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. However, authorities stated that an investigation would use the new information that was found to continue to search for suspects. December 8th of 2022, Joseph was finally officially identified to the public. And they announced that his name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli and that he was born January 13th, 1953. Genealogists had uncovered his name more than a year earlier in October 2021. However, they had to keep this information quiet due to the investigation. January 19th, 2023, Joseph's parents would be reported. Investigators were able to identify him thanks to a cousin who uploaded their DNA into a public database.
This is what I was saying that one episode. Ancestry.com, 23andMe. Josh did one. I can't remember what company he did. But this is how you find out. Like, that's how I found out that one of my cousins had an affair outside of his marriage. My mom's like, that never happened. And I was like, it says that they're my fourth cousin. He's my third cousin. So it would make sense that they'd be my fourth cousin. And I did the math and I was like, yeah, that's right. Who's wrong here? Because I know it's not me. But yeah.
DNA does not lie, Ma. So investigators would end up encouraging this cousin's mother, who would end up being a first cousin of Joseph, to submit a genetic profile to GED Match, which allowed them to identify Joseph's parents. Yes. Okay, I thought you had something to say. Once they had all this information, investigators were able to get a court order for Joseph's birth certificate, which would then confirm Joseph and his parents' names, and it was also verified by DNA. So they then had birth certificate that backed up the DNA. In December 2022, at a press conference, Philadelphia Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw stated that Joseph's death is still an active homicide investigation and we still need the public's help. Help, not health. Law enforcement reported that at the same press conference that both of Joseph's biological parents were deceased. However, he still had living half siblings. Because remember, his parents got married to other people. It would make sense that they would procreate with their spouses. Philadelphia Police Department also stated that he had lived in the area of 61st and Market Streets. I don't know what the neighbors knew or didn't know. The child did live past the age of 4 years old, so there would be somebody out there that would have seen this child, perhaps another family member that hasn't stepped forward, possibly a neighbor that remembers seeing that child. and remembers whatever was occurring at that particular household. This came from the head of Philadelphia Police Homicide Unit, Captain Jason Smith. January 2023, WCAU News in Philadelphia reported Joseph was born to a couple that lived at 64th and Callowhill, but the channel then stated it was unclear if he lived there long enough for people to even notice him. Also in January of 2023, the Philadelphia Inquirer announced who Joseph's parents were, that they were not married or known to be in a relationship. They also announced that Joseph's mother had previously put a little girl up for adoption. Betsy's cousin, Joseph's mother, had given this information in a 2023 interview that she was sure that Betsy might not have even raised Joseph. So Joseph was originally buried in a potter's field because they didn't know. But in 1998, he was reburied at Ivy Hill Cemetery in the Cedar Brook section of Philadelphia, which had donated a large plot. His coffin, headstone, and funeral service had been donated by the son of the man who had originally buried Joseph back in 1957. There was significant public attendance and media coverage at his reburial. City residents keep Joseph's grave decorated with flowers and toys. Joseph's headstone was first installed, containing the words "America's Unknown Child," with a plaque underneath reading, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." On January 13th, 2023, which would have been Joseph's 70th birthday, a new memorial that contained his full name and image was unveiled. Along with this addition, his name was added to the existing headstone. Are you okay? I say this as I see you crying.
It gets me every time, dude.
I know. I had to take like multiple breaks doing the research because I'm at work doing this just sobbing. Not a good look.
And now, I'm pregnant. Like, now you know why I couldn't do it.
I know. So, are you ready for our favorite part, the wild theories?
Yes.
I just went, and now to our favorite part, the wild theories that showed up. Obviously, these theories occurred before he was identified and that they were investigated by law enforcement and amateur sleuths. I wanted to include that in there so that way it's not just wild crap that showed up. So one of the first ones is the foster home. So this theory popped up because there was a foster home that was about 1.5 miles or 2.5 kilometers from where Joseph was found. In 1960, so 3 years after Joseph was found, Remington Bristow, who was an employee at the medical examiner's office who pursued this case until his death in 1993, contacted a New Jersey psychic who told him to look for a house that matched the foster home. When the psychic was brought to the discovery site, she led Remington directly to the house. While there, he attended an estate sale where he discovered a bassinet that was similar to the one that was sold by JCPenney. In my notes, I went, which honestly doesn't mean much because there was a baby boom from 1946 to 1964, and I'm sure JCPenney was making a bank on that.
Yes, however, but you have to remember JCPenney was also considered expensive because it was like Sears, right? So they had houses and they had automobiles that you could buy up until the 60s. that you could actually put together yourself, and they just brought you the kits and you put them together. The bassinets weren't easily affordable. The ones that you would get from regular, I guess, grocers or whatever, because grocers still had bassinets, and local carpenters as well would have them, but they weren't that easily accessible. That's why they were trying to link it.
Okay. But again, like baby boom, like, oh, it's bassinet. There's going to be thousands of them. So Remington also discovered blankets hanging on a clothesline that were similar to the one that Joseph's body had been wrapped in when he was discovered. And I put, again, similar, yes, but again, things were starting to be mass produced. Because 57, right before the 60s, fabric was becoming more mass produced. And even if you got the fabric and cut it yourself, the fabric itself was still starting to be mass produced because the factories were starting to actually get back on track and not be having to be shipped or changed into basically war factories like they were in World War II. So I was like, not that uncommon that, especially because of in that area, the material would all be the same. Remington believed that Joseph was the son of the stepdaughter of the man who ran the foster home, and that they had disposed of Joseph so that the stepdaughter would not be exposed as an unwed mother. The police established that all of the foster children were accounted for, and a re-examination by investigators confirmed that the family was likely not involved. In 1998, Philadelphia Police Lieutenant Tom Augustine, who was in charge of the investigation at this point, along with several members of the VIDOCQ Society, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, which was a group of retired policemen profilers. The lieutenant interviewed the foster father and the stepdaughter, who at this point he had married, and the foster home investigation was closed. Oh, yes. So, first wife and stepdaughter's mother passed away. He proceeds to marry stepdaughter. You can't tell me that there was not some shit going on there.
There was definitely some sort of shady stuff going on there. Meanwhile, the reason I know a good chunk of stuff about this case, we'll talk about it in a minute, but I know she pretty much put media in here too, right?
I've got all sorts of news articles and stuff.
No, like TV shows and documentaries.
No, I did not.
So there was a TV show that was very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s called Cold Case. And I'm bringing this up because this was my Sydney watches Grey's Anatomy, Rachel watches The Great British Bake Off. I watch Cold Case. That is my shtick. And it was season 1, episode 14, Boy in the Box. And they called him Arnold Collier, and it was essentially the same case. And I became fascinated with the case after watching it. But it was published in 2004. Or no, hold on. Yeah, 2004. And this was before the DNA and stuff had come out where they could even link him. And so that's why, like, I'm paying attention. A good chunk of stuff I know is because of this TV show, because they had everything linked, and it makes me very emotional.
I know. So the next theory was the woman known as Martha, or M. Just the letter M. This theory was brought forward in February. Little chart. So this theory was brought forward in February of 2002 by a woman who was only identified as M, or Martha. This woman accused her mother of acquiring and killing Joseph. Police considered her story to be plausible. However, they were troubled by her testimony due to her history of mental illness, which in 2002, unfortunately, it was still
Taboo.
Yeah, pretty much. So Martha stated that her mother and father had purchased a boy named Jonathan, who she later claimed was Joseph, from his birth parents in the summer of 1954. After which he was beaten to being passed and was left abandoned inside a box outside of town. Of course, the police were unable to verify her story because so much time had passed. Neighbors who had access to her house during the stated time period denied that there had been a boy living there and dismissed her claims as ridiculous. And so because of that, the police just let it go. Another theory is from forensic artist Frank Bender, who had developed a theory that the victim, Joseph, may have been raised as a girl. Joseph's unprofessional haircut, which appeared to have been performed in haste, was the basis for the scenario, as well as the appearance of the eyebrows having been styled. In 2008, Frank Bender released a sketch of the unidentified child with long hair, reflecting the strands that were found on the body. Another theory was in 2016, two writers, one from Los Angeles, California, Jim Hoffman, and the other from New Jersey, Louis Romano, believed that they had discovered a potential identity from Memphis, Tennessee, and requested that DNA be compared between this family member and Joseph. The lead was originally discovered by a Philadelphia man who introduced Jim and Louis to each other, and was developed and presented with the help of Jim to the Philadelphia Police Department and the Society in early 2013. December of 2013, Lewis became aware of the lead and agreed to help the man from Philadelphia and Jim to obtain the DNA from this particular family member in January 2014, which was quickly sent to the Philadelphia Police Department. Local authorities confirmed that they would investigate the lead, but said they would need to do more research on the circumstances surrounding the link to Memphis before comparing DNA. In December of 2017, so 4 years after that, Homicide Sergeant Bob Kilmer confirmed that DNA taken from the Memphis man was compared to the Fox Chase boy, Joseph, and there was no connection. And again, to this day, it is still unsolved. And that's all I got for Joseph.
So, do you want me to talk a little bit about the TV show?
Yes, include all of your information.
Okay. All right. So, it's from the TV show Cold Case, and it is, as I said, season 1, episode 14, And they reopened the 1958 Schmurder case of a 6-year-old boy whose body was found in a cardboard box outside Philadelphia. Now, instead of it being a bassinet box, it was a radiator box, like a water heater. Back then, hi, honey. The radiator boxes were huge. I mean, still to this day, radiator boxes are pretty big. Back then, double the width. They were boxy instead of circles, some of them, anyways. And it was a orphanage run by nuns, and there was let me go to the pictures I sent you. A science camp that the boys had gone to. I sent it in the pictures. Okay. So there was a actual science club called the Science Club Cornflake Experiment. And it was a real experiment that was conducted in between 1946 and 1953 by Harvard University and MIT. So the boy in the box case is a real case. The child was identified in 2022, which we already talked about. The Science Club at Fernwood Orphanage is a reference to the actual experiments conducted in the late 40s, early 1950s at Fernald State School, originally called the Massachusetts School for the Feeble-Minded, at Waltham, Massachusetts, which was considered an asylum, but it was for people who were simpletons, I guess you could say. Be a good word for that. Oh, no. And the experiments were funded by Quaker Oats and MIT, which is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The studies involved 74 boys, ages were 17 to 10. Subjects were given gifts like Mickey Mouse watches, tickets to Red Sox games, and taken on field trips away from the school. The experiments, the experiments became public knowledge during a 1995 lawsuit. Quaker claimed they only supplied the oatmeal, but it was clear they were involved in the research for marketing purposes to find out if their cereal was healthier than their competitor at the time, which was grape nuts. I do love me some grape nuts. A settlement of $1.85 million was reached in January of 1998 to be shared among the surviving subjects who were still alive and part of the lawsuit. A good chunk of them had actually passed. And what was one more? So in the show, the investigation was reopened when a suitcase containing items related to the boy is left at a church, like a section of the blanket, a hat, pieces of his clothes that were, pieced together, and parts of his hair. Prompting the team to look into the orphanage where he lives, detectives find an adult sister, Gretchen, which is not the actual sister, it's a nun, that discover the kids' records were falsified and that they found out that the true parents, their identities were crucial for solving the case, which is the same for this case here. However, there's still no finite thing. Now, do you want to know my theory?
Of course.
I think he's outside. Anyways, so my theory is that the baby's too big for my hips. So
I mean, that's also true, but
yes,
doesn't help they're laying side to side.
we can't
Cockeyed.
include this. Yeah, no, we can't include this because this is going to be after the baby showers. No, the day before the baby shower. So shit, we can't include any of that. Anyways, the baby brisket is like this.
That's why I corrected myself.
Yeah, I did. So my theory is because the homes that were in the area, there were 3 homes, not just that one. So there were 3 other homes that were orphanages or unwed mother homes. There was one, maybe I want to say about 20 to 30 miles outside. There was one that was the close one that you were talking about, which was the foster home. And then there was another one that was about a good 45 minutes away from there. Those 3 homes had nuns that would be there pretty frequently, obviously, as nuns do. And with my background of religious theologies, as well as going to a religious school and having done the research that I've done, I think what happened to him was an exorcism gone wrong. Think about it.
Continue.
Okay. If you look at the bruising on the body, it resembles the pressure points that people put on the body when they're covered during exorcisms of children.
Okay, I'm not experiencing exorcisms of children, so please go on.
Okay. So there are various pressure points on our body that cause us to get calmer, which people have known in Western medicine for eons. Okay. It only recently got found out, I want to say in maybe the 1920s, 1930s, when pressing on these pressure points, people release oxytocin into their body. And some of these pressure points are on the knees, on the legs and the calves, on the thighs, the hips, the chest bones, the arms, the hands, the throats, all the areas where if you look, you can see indentations, little pinpoints, which look like fingerprints. Those bruises are from prolonged periods of time of people pushing on those areas for pressure points. Now, if you do the wrong pressure points, it does cause organ failure, heart failure, distress, and heart attack, and sometimes stroke.
What would explain the blunt force trauma?
The blunt force trauma could have been a seizure caused by these pressure points. Because if you don't do them the correct way, it causes all these other myriad of things. So if he has a stroke, which could lead to a seizure. I've had a stroke. Dr. Sister's had a stroke. Emily's had umpteen seizures. I had to watch her to make sure during her seizure to make sure she didn't stroke out. Because if she hits her head, she can have a stroke. If he's in the middle of having a seize, you don't know if he's having a seizure. He can hit his head and stroke out, and that would be the cause of his death if he was on concrete floor or marble floor or brick floor or tar, for that matter.
Anything hard enough.
Right. So if you think about it this way, from my experience and from how invested I was in this case, before you and I even became friends, this was my Roman era. This was my Roman Empire. I was trying to figure out who would have done this. And I was like, the only logical explanation for that time back then is an unwed mother home ran by nuns and an exorcism. Because the bruises on the body match up with pressure points from Midwestern medicine.
It's fair.
Mind you, even after all this time, the nuns aren't alive anymore. So there would be no way for those people to come forward.
That's fair. And even if they came forward after it happened, they would have had to answer to a lot of questions from their diocese and the chain of command and all the things, and then explain why they were doing this to begin with.
But yeah, that's my theory, is that it was religious based. Because you also have to remember in Philadelphia at that time, you had the Quakers and the Protestants and the Amish.
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
Not saying there's anything wrong with Amish people. I've met plenty of them. They're funny as sin. I love them, most of them. There's only one I hate. But I think as far as theories go, that's the only one that makes plausible sense.
I mean, I can see that.
Because you're correct. As far as the blanket that he was wrapped in and the bassinet box, because, you know, even though it wasn't easily affordable, anybody could have purchased it.
Right. And so, because especially if they're buying, because fabric, even then, it was on the bolt. So the blankets, like, who knows how many people in that same area had the exact same blanket. So the blanket aspect would have been hard to prove.
But yeah, that's all I got to say about me deep diving on that case personally.
And that's all I have on the topic, period. So I'm glad I was able to cover it for you, though.
Thank you very much. It gets me every time.
I understand. It was upsetting for me too, and I don't have the pregnancy hormones in my body, so I can understand exactly how much worse it would have been for you.
I mean, the next topics I have, let me take a look actually at our calendar, because I've already forgotten, and I literally just worked on it 45 minutes ago. Let's see here. Oh, and I got to think about lunch. I didn't even think about dinner.
Gotta deal with the meals.
I have to think about lunch. Okay. So the next two cases that I've done, the next one, if I remember correctly. Doop 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 doop. Ah, ah, is another cold case that took 29 years for DNA and forensics to be tested, but it was actually solved. So it's a good transition from today to the next one. But yeah, I enjoyed you doing the research for me today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I still hate you for letting me cry, but that's besides the point. I'm gonna cry at the drop of a hat now, anyways. So it's fine.
I was gonna say you were gonna cry regardless, no matter what topic I did. So that's just the hormones.
And you need to feed yourself because I've heard your stomach like 6 times throughout this entire episode.
That's why I ate before we got started. I don't know what's going on.
Your stomach's saying it's not enough. Feed me, Seymour. If you don't know where that's from, you're far too young to be listening. Anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend. As always, stay feral.
Bite the hand.
And we'll see you guys next time. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Well, party possums, that's today's dose of the Pandemonium. Thanks for listening and watching the ADHD chaos. Review, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Tune in next week for more continued madness. And as always, stay feral.